Hi, it's Steph, and we're at the Home Depot, and they've received a whole new shipment of beautiful evergreens, trees, shrubs, bare root roses, and even some perennials. So let's go ahead and take a look at the March inventory at the Home Depot. And look at this tree. What a beauty. This is a Yoshino cherry that is quite large. The caliper on it has to be about 2 to 3 inches, so it's a pretty mature specimen. And the pot looks to be a 5 to 7 gallon, and it's $110. It's all budded up and ready to burst into bloom in your garden. So if you are looking for a beautiful spring blooming tree, this Yoshino cherry might be the one. Let me show you the photo. I actually planted one of these in my garden two years ago. So this will be its third spring, and it's looking really beautiful. It has these very airy looking like white blooms. They almost look light pink when they first open up, and then they fade to this really pretty white. It says it's a garden showpiece. I have mine planted in the front yard. It likes full sun, and they're about a medium-sized tree. They need 25-foot spacing. So they get anywhere from 15 to 25 feet tall and wide, hardy down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Another spring beauty is the Eastern Redbud, and this one's actually in a clump form. Now, I planted an Eastern Redbud in my garden a few years back. I want to say it's going on about 5 years now. It's absolutely beautiful, but I bought a single trunk, and in a couple of storms, windstorms, I've already lost a couple of limbs off of the tree. So knowing now what I know, I would go for a multi-trunk or a clump like this because I think it'll be much sturdier. These are beautiful spring blooming trees, and even when they're not in bloom, this is what the blooms look like. This really beautiful purple coloring. So first you get these blooms, and then once the blooms have faded, you will start getting the leaves. And even the leaves on this tree are beautiful because they're heart-shaped and they get beautiful golden fall color. So an Eastern Redbud is native here in the Northeast, and it is a beautiful tree for your garden. Crab apples. Now these are beautiful for spring color. They bloom in the spring, and they also have fruit for the birds. So they have these little crab apples that the birds love to snack on. There is a persistent variety and one that is not persistent. The non-persistent will drop all of its fruit, and the persistent will hold on to its fruit a lot better, which means it'll be less messy in your garden. Now these are average medium-sized trees at about 15 feet tall and wide. Really pretty. And let's see, this is about a 5 gallon, and the price on these, $84.98. They have the crabapple profusion as well as the crabapple Robinson, and they both prefer full sun. And yet one more variety of crabapple, the prairie fire. This one is a real popular one with that beautiful red foliage. You can even see it emerging on the tree here now. Just a really pretty spring specimen. Now here's another spring blooming tree that I did have in my garden, the purple leaf plum thundercloud. But I will say that even though it has really pretty light pink blooms in the spring and red foliage, in my garden it wasn't the healthiest of trees. So we actually ended up taking it down because it was sickly, and we replaced it with a Yoshino cherry. But they have some here, and some people have really good luck with them, and they look beautiful. But let's see how much this one is. The flowering plum Thundercloud is $110, and it's in a 10-gallon container. And here's a pretty shrub for some early spring color. This is Quince, and let's go ahead and take a look at the variety. This is a proven winner's plant, and you can see how beautiful these blooms are. They look like little rosettes. Isn't that stunning? Gorgeous. You could even cut on these branches once you have a nice mature shrub, and you can force them inside. So put them in a vase and let them bloom in your house for some early spring color. It's just beautiful. There used to be a variety a couple of years ago that was a peach coloring that was really beautiful as well, but I have not seen the peach one in quite some time, so I'm not sure if it's still in production. But this one here is called Double Take Orange, and it has a little bit of a red appearance to it. It's the Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs. Let's see how large it gets. It likes sun, and it is hardy in USDA zones 5 through 9, or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It gets to be 4 to 5 feet tall and wide. It is thornless with large flowers and long blooming. And it blooms in spring. Let's see, these here are a number 2 container for $29.98. And they have some proven winners, lilac bloomerang. Now this is a reblooming lilac. I actually have one in my garden, and what's fun is that it'll bloom for me in spring, and then towards the end of the summer I will get some sporadic reblooming, which is always a pleasant surprise because lilacs smell amazing. So this one here, the bloomerang dwarf purple by Proven Winners, it likes sun, and it is hardy in zones 3 through 7 or down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and it gets to be 2.5 to 3 feet tall and wide. Mine is about 5 years old now, and I want to say it's closer to 4.5 feet and about 3.5 wide. So it's put on some good size, and it's a really beautiful lilac. Provides interest in spring, summer, and fall with that reblooming. And these here are, let's see, a number 3 size container for $34.98. And some Japanese maples. They're still only budded up, but pretty soon this is what they're going to look like. If you've been around my channel for a while, you know that I absolutely love Japanese maples. I actually have a collection of them, and this is a really pretty red leaf maple. These are very commonly used as a feature tree in a front yard, and they're stunning because this red color against all of the green in the landscape really stands out. They need this particular variety, this red one, 6 hours of sun. In general, a lot of varieties prefer part shade, but the red ones like the Bloodgood, the Emperor one, and this one that's named Red Leaf can generally take a little bit more sun at 6 hours. Now they vary in size, but in general they're a medium-sized tree. The measurements here say it gets 20 to 25 feet tall and wide, and just a really beautiful tree. Let's see how much these are. It looks like they're in a number 7 container for $110. And some blueberry bushes. I believe that these are great options to be integrated into your ornamental landscaping, because blueberry bushes, not only do they flower in the spring, late spring, early summer, right before they start setting their fruit, but they also have really pretty red foliage in the fall. This here is the blueberry high bush Jersey, and you can see that even the twigs have a really pretty yellow coloring to them. So if you have an area of the garden that you want to add a shrub that provides ornamental interest and that will also provide fruit, a blueberry might be a good option. So this one here is a number 7 container, and they are $49.98. And another really pretty evergreen that provides late winter, early spring blooms, is deer resistant, has really beautiful coloring on new foliage, and pretty low maintenance, is the Pieris. This variety here, it's also known as Japanese Andromeda. So this Pieris is called Valley Valentine, and they like, well, this one says it's full sun, but I have 2 in my garden that are dwarf size. They stay about 3 to 4 feet tall and wide. The varieties that I have are the Monrovia Enchanted Forest Impish Elf. That is a beautiful pink, rose pink color, just like this, just maybe a little bit deeper, more fuchsia. And I also have one called Valley Rose. They were just blooming, or in bloom right now, and they're beautiful. I have them planted in part shade and in a spot of my garden that has a lot of deer, and they are deer resistant for me in my garden. So this is a wonderful evergreen shrub to consider for a woodland area or part shade area where you might potentially deal with deer, so that you can get these late winter, early spring blooms. They're these little dainty blooms that are bell-shaped, and they come in different colors. This one happens to be pink. They also come in white. I've even seen some that look a little bit more red. So lots of varieties to choose from for this evergreen. This one here says that it needs 5-foot spacing and hardy down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. In general, Pieris is hardy in zones about 5 through 9. These are a number 7 container for $69.98. Some Japanese holly, and this one looks like it's a pyramid shape, and it likes full sun. The variety is Jersey Pinnacle, and it says that it needs 48-inch spacing, so it looks like it would be pretty compact, down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So these are also great candidates to grow in containers. So if you want to set up 2 containers, say on the side of an entrance, on the side of a porch, or a garage door, these evergreens make great options because they're low maintenance and you can keep them out all year round in a container. You always just want to make sure that your containers have proper drainage. Let's see how much this holly is. $34.98. And then you could always plant some annuals kind of trailing along the bottom. I love the use of evergreens in containers. And another evergreen that would also make a great option for a container or even in a landscape, let's say if you have more of a contemporary planting style, is the sky pencil holly. These are an upright evergreen that stays pretty compact. I've only ever seen them get about 2 to 3 feet in diameter and maybe upwards of 6 feet feet or so in height. And this likes full sun. And it gets 36 to 48 inches in spacing is what it needs, hardy down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And it says that it is deer resistant. Now I have some holly in my garden that the deer will eat the new growth, but then they won't touch the leaves once they get hardened off. But this particular variety does appear to say it is deer resistant. In fact, I've shown this in some of my videos before, and I've had commenters say that the deer do not touch it in their garden. So if you deal with deer, something you want to look into. And this is a number 3 container for $39.98. And look at these adorable rounded shape evergreens. Now they look like boxwood, right? But they're not. These are actually hollies. They're very similar in appearance. Their foliage looks very similar. So the Japanese holly Hillary, it likes full sun. It says it is deer resistant, and it gets to be 24 to 36 inches in size. Evergreen, so it will maintain this beautiful foliage all year round. They need 36 to 48 inch spacing and hardy down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And they have quite a few here. And these are a number 3 container for $32.98. And look at these beautiful red twigs. They provide so much interest in your winter garden with this vibrant red color, especially if you have snow on the ground. They're also beautiful to cut for winter and holiday arranging. And soon, these will start leafing out with a bunch of green leaves, and they have these tiny little white blooms. They're great for boggy areas. So if you have an area in your garden that retains a little bit of moisture, dogwoods do really well because they like soil that stays a bit moist. They are deer resistant, and look at that. Such a beautiful shrub with all that red color. They bloom in late spring. They need 6 to 10 foot spacing, and they're hardy down to negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And these here are a number 3 container for $26.98. And here are some berry bearing hollies. So these are the quintessential Christmas holly that you see that have the red berries. Now, in order to get red berries on your hollies, you do need to have a male and a female so that they can pollinate each other. And they just need to be within 50 to 100 feet of each other. So if you have a neighbor that has a male or a female and you have the other, then pollination will occur. So it's important to know when you're buying these what variety you have. So the one with the berries is the female. So you can see here it's called Blue Princess, and these are Ilex Blue Princess number 3 container for $29.98. And then right beside it they have the Holly Blue Prince, and this one would not have berries, but it would pollinate the female so that you do get berries. And these like part sun, they can handle sun. So I've seen them planted in both part sun or sun, and they need 10 to 14 foot spacing and hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Another spring blooming shrub is the azalea, and they actually have an interesting variety in stock. It is one that has variegated foliage. Look at this. Isn't that pretty? Budded up and getting ready to bloom. And this variety is called, let's see here, Azalea Silver Sword. And it looks like it has a fuchsia colored bloom, gets to be 24 inches in height, so that's pretty compact. And azaleas do like part sun. If you have them in too much sun, they can start to get stressed. I actually had to move one that was getting a little too much sun. It blooms early to late spring. It needs 36-inch spacing, and it is hardy down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And some rhododendron, another spring bloomer. This one here is a variety that has small leaves. So this is the rhododendron PGM Elite, and you can see here that the leaves on this one is much smaller than the traditional rhododendrons, which have much larger broadleaf foliage. They're both evergreen, and this one has these really pretty bell-shaped little purple blooms. Such a pretty sight this time of year. And let's see, they like part sun. So most rhododendrons are understory trees, which means they like to be planted under the canopy of, say, like deciduous trees. And they get to be 3 to 5 feet in size. These are also more compact than the larger leaved rhododendrons. They bloom mid to late spring, and they are hardy down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And these here are, let's see, what size container? They're a number 2 container for $24.98. And some golden euonymus. This is a great shrub that is also evergreen and provides yellow coloring. Look at this. Now the color does go a little bit more green in the winter, but then it gets really golden when it starts to heat up again in spring and in summer. Now the deer do eat this in my garden, so something to be aware of, but it is a really pretty foliage evergreen. It likes full sun, and with most evergreens that have golden color, you're going to get the brightest yellow coloring when it gets full sun. And let's see how big this one gets. 4 to 6 feet in height, needs 36-inch spacing, hardy down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And these are just under a gallon for $14.98. They have both the emerald green arborvitae and the green giant here at my store, so I thought that I would give you a side-by-side comparison so you can kind of see the differences. The emerald green arborvitae has a denser growth habit and it is more compact, and the green giant has a looser, more broad growth habit and more of a fern type foliage. So they're quite different in their appearance as well as in their size. So this one will stay more compact at maybe 12 to 15 feet in height and about 4 feet or so in width, where this one here will get upwards of 25 feet in height and about 10 feet or 10 to 12 feet across. They get really large, which means that they will make a great fence really fast. These are fast growers, and these are more deer resistant. Those are not. So some key differences I thought I'd point out. They both like full sun. They both need water, pretty consistent watering until they are established. But if you're looking to make a decision in terms of what type of arborvitae you want to use for a living fence or for some privacy screening, those are some things to consider. And these green giant arborvitaes are in a number 3 container for $34.98. The emerald greens here, let's see how much these are. A number 3 container for $29.98. And here's a juniper that's also a great evergreen. It has this low growing kind of arching habit. I have a couple of these in my garden, and the more sun you give them, the brighter yellow the tips will get. Now these here look like they might have been in a little bit of shade, but you can see the spots that are starting to golden up here, the ones that are at the top that are facing the sun. But I really like this shrub a lot. And let's see here. The Juniper Old Gold is a number 3 container for $26.98, and you can see here in the photo what it's supposed to look like when it has all of its golden color. It gets to be about 36 inches in height, and it needs about 6 foot spacing because it does grow kind of wide. And they're very easy to trim back. I actually cut on mine every year to make my winter arrangements. They're deer resistant. The deer do not touch them in my garden, and once they're established, they're drought tolerant. And like I said, golden shrubs, full sun. And check out these blue beauties. These are a dwarf Colorado blue spruce called Glauca globosa. And if you want to have a really interesting palette of evergreens in your garden, you're going to have some that are green, some that are golden, and some that are this beautiful blue-gray coloring. These are stunning. Now, these are what you would call like a showpiece or a specimen type evergreen. They are deer resistant, and I can vouch for that because I have a couple in my garden. They like full sun, and just like the golden evergreens, we'll get the best color in full sun. The same is true for blue evergreens. You'll get the best vibrant blue color in full sun. And let's see how big these get. They need 3 to 5 foot spacing, and they're hardy down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So these are super hardy. I want to say that blue spruces are hardy down to a zone 2 or 3. And this here is a number 10 container for $129. But these are great size. You have a hillside area or somewhere that you have a hard time with retaining soil, where you get a little bit of erosion, an evergreen ground cover like this is a wonderful option. I actually planted a few of these in my garden as a ground cover, and they're doing really well. This is a blue rug juniper. The variety is called Wiltoni, but the blue rug juniper has this blue coloring, and it keeps spreading, and over time it will cover up that area and retain your soil for you. It kind of serves as a living mulch, so it's a really great option. And these here are number 3 containers for $26.98. And it'll tell you the size that it'll spread to, 4 to 6 feet in space. And they don't get very tall. At max, maybe 8 to 10 inches in height. So they stay really low and then just keep spreading. You can see here some golden evergreens, and right on the side some blue ones, and right over there some green. So they really just make a pretty combination. But this blue one here is another really pretty one. I have a similar shrub called the blue owl juniper, and it's gorgeous. This one here is the juniper angelica blue, and they have a similar habit where they just kind of grow wider than they do tall. You see how those branches sort of arch? They have a really like whimsical look in the garden. So they get to be 5 to 6 feet tall, and they spread 10 to 15 feet wide, and they're hardy down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So very hardy, just like the Colorado blue spruces that we just looked at. And they like full sun. The Juniper Angelica Blue is a number 3 container for $26.98. Let me pull this container out so you can kind of get a look at the shape of it. That sort of gives you an idea of its growth habit. You can see how it sort of arches outward. Really pretty. And another one of my favorite yellow shrubs is the gold mop cypress. I love the texture on these. They have a really beautiful texture and kind of arching, graceful habit, and this beautiful golden color. But these also will get the most yellow color in full sun. If you look underneath the branches that are hidden or that are shaded, this is the color that you would get if you had this planted in more shade. They would be more green. So if you want to enjoy this really pretty golden yellow, you want to plant it in sun. They are deer resistant. The deer do not touch this in my garden. They get to be 4 to 6 feet in height, and they need 36 to 48 inch spacing, hardy down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. And these here are a number 3 container for $29.98. They also have smaller containers here, and these are just under 1 gallon for $16.98. And while this beautiful Japanese maple will take some work to get home, look at the size of this root ball. I am certain that this would be really impressive in the landscape. You'd need a pallet jack, a few really strong people, and probably a truck to get this home. This tree is $999. It's in a ball and burlap. And the color is a Japanese maple ever red. So it's going to be a red Japanese maple. And it has been pruned pretty well because it has really nice structure. Look at that. What a beauty. Here's the tag. It likes part sun. It's Japanese maple ever red. It's a specimen tree, $999. And let's see, it needs 12 to 15 feet spacing, hardy down to -10 degrees Fahrenheit. And look at this beautiful yellow bark. This is a weeping willow, golden willow. Look at that. Called Tristis. It looks like it likes part sun. And weeping willows are gorgeous. They're such like whimsical specimen trees with these weeping branches and leaves. They love water. You will often see these planted next to lakes, ponds, and bodies of water because willow roots like to reach for water. So a caution is that if you have a well or septic system, you want to be really careful about planting a weeping willow in your garden. They are deer resistant. They get to be 50 to 80 feet in height. And they need 40 to 60 foot spacing, hardy down to -50 degrees Fahrenheit, so very hardy. There is no price tag on that one. It's been scraped off. Home Depot is really impressing with all this variety of Japanese maple that they are carrying this spring. This is a Japanese maple Tamakayama. It's a really popular lace leaf type Japanese maple. It has really delicate lace leaves, and they get to be 15 to 18 feet in height, which I think they get smaller than that actually. I would say they probably top out at about 15 feet, and they need 15 foot spacing, hardy down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. And this one says it can take full sun. Now again, I would say that Japanese maples in my experience prefer part shade. The ones that I know to like full sun are the Bloodgoods, can handle more full sun, as well as the Emperor one. But in general, if you start to see that your leaves are getting crispy, they're getting too much sun. And here's a really interesting cherry tree. It is currently starting to bloom. Look at that with their dainty little pink blooms. And it is called the autumn flowering cherry. And what's interesting about this variety of cherry tree is that it'll bloom now in spring and it'll repeat bloom for you in autumn or in fall. So it likes full sun. It's a garden showpiece. It blooms early to late spring and repeats mid to late fall. It needs 15 to 20 foot spacing, and it is hardy down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. And look what they have in the back there. Some beautiful southern magnolias. You can tell because they have those signature really large, shiny, beautiful leaves. They're still wrapped up because they're putting them out. So we'll look at those the next time we get to the Home Depot. And some more exciting stuff that's just starting to show up. They have some little lime hydrangeas in the back there, some Acorus sweet flag in the front here, which if you've been around my channel for a while, you know that I love in my garden. And they also have some pulmonaria, which is a wonderful shade plant that blooms in spring. It's already blooming. These came from a greenhouse somewhere, but because it's pretty chilly still, they're keeping them here and wrapped up, which is a really wise idea. But pretty soon we'll be able to look at all of those things, friends. See this? The pulmonaria, they have beautiful foliage with the speckling. They almost look iridescent like silver with these really pretty purplish, blue, pink blooms. These are a wonderful part shade plant. And there is the Acorus. This is the variegated sweet flag. Love this stuff. If you have a spot in your garden that stays a little bit boggy, it's wonderful in moist soil. It's often planted next to ponds. It's also evergreen for me in my zone 6, and it will stay this beautiful yellow color all season long. So this is a really great option for a grass. It's very similar looking too to the Hakanakloa, the Japanese forest grass. So if you can't find the Hakanakloa, this would be a good alternative, and the added bonus that it stays evergreen. And the pansies have shown up. These are pansy planters for $8.98, and these are such cheery little spring blooms. They have some purple and some shades of yellow, and they also have those mixed ones in the back there. And they come in this decorative planter that you can then reuse, and $8.98. These like full sun. They also have these flats of the pansies. So if you wanted to plant them in some planters, you see here, let's see how many comes. A 6-pack for $8.98. Those are adorable. So they have those white with the purple, and there's also these yellow with a bit of a burgundy center. And if you didn't get around to planting any spring blooming bulbs last fall and you want to enjoy some tulips, they have these 10-inch drop and decorate bulb planters that you would just go ahead and put into one of your containers, and they are $19.98, and they're all popping through the soil and getting ready to bloom. These are actually an even better deal. These are the 12-inch spring bulb garden in these low bold style planters, and these are $15.98. And it looks like you get some daffodils, which are perennial, so then you can plant them out in your garden, and hyacinth, which are also perennial, and then tulips, which are generally annual. There are some varieties that will return in your garden, but for the most part, tulips will bloom the first year and not reliably return for you. But hyacinth will come back for a few years, and daffodils can last a really long time. So these are a great price, $15.98. With Easter coming, if you're going somewhere for Easter, this would make a great hostess gift. And then they can plant out the bulbs in their garden. And some roses. Now these can be called bare root because they're just packed in a little bit of peat moss. Sometimes they come in plastic bags. In this case, these are in potted containers, plastic containers. A couple of things to note about roses. They like a well-draining soil. If you have soil that stays boggy, that can introduce diseases like black spot and yellow leaves. So you want to plant them in a well-draining spot. They love full sun. Now these can be planted as long as your ground is workable. You can go ahead and plant these now, and then they will start breaking dormancy when the weather allows. Now you can see these already have some buds that are starting to swell, and they have quite a few varieties here. It looks like the price is mostly $14.98, and they will provide directions on the back as to how to plant them. And now depending on the variety is going to depend how large the rose will get. So this particular one is Mr. Lincoln. It looks like it gets 4 to 5 feet in size. This one's a Lagerfield, and it gets 3 to 4.5 feet. So you'll want to know the size on these so that you know where to plant them so that they have enough spacing. But there's quite a few varieties. Fragrant Cloud looks like a pretty orange red, and this one's a real popular one, the Iceberg, really pretty white variety. So these are a great option to pick up roses pretty affordably at just $14.98. This is a climber, it'll tell you here. I actually bought a climbing rose from one of these containers at Lowe's a couple of years ago, the Zephyrine Ruin. It's a thornless climbing rose, which is really cool. And let's see here, they have Belinda's Dream, a yellow one called Origold, and John Cabot, and a Morden Blush. There's been people who have actually found an Eden climbing rose in one of these containers, which would be a real score because those are gorgeous. This one's called Perfume Delight. Let's see what other kinds they might have. Pink Parfait, New Day, and oh, this is a really pretty blush pink one up here called Queen Elizabeth. Look at that. And this one's another Lagerfeld. So some really pretty options. There's one called Love and Peace. Looks like an orange and with a little bit of pink and yellow. And they even have Blue Girl at the bottom, which is a really pretty lavender color rose. And a couple more here. Look at this one, John F. Kennedy. They have a pretty pink one called Arizona. And this yellow one is called Sunsprite. Dolly Parton, a pretty red one. And Charisma, another brandy, and that pretty apricot. And some pots. Those are really nice looking terracotta pots. But look at the deal on these urn planters. $39.88 for a 2-pack, and they actually look pretty nice. Now the good thing about these is they're that lightweight plastic kind of material, so while they look like they could be stone, they're going to be light, which is great because once you pack them up with soil, planters get pretty heavy. So I thought that these were really pretty. They come in a cream and like a dark charcoal color, and you're getting 2 of them for $39.88. And look at these cute basket planters. I actually love basket planters. I have a few on my front porch right now with spring bulbs in them. And the one that I have though is a plastic material, and so they can withstand the elements. And then I have a grow bag lining the inside. But these here are an actual basket material. And while they are lined, they're for indoor use only. You can see here it says indoor or covered outdoor use. But these are really cute. I love the handles on them. And they are $14.98. So if you have an indoor plant that you want to put in a basket, this might be a good option. They're 12.5 inches. And here we have some beautiful hydrangeas inside the warmer part of the store, because these are what they call the greenhouse grown or the florist grade hydrangeas. Now these make beautiful gifts, and you'll often see them out around Easter and Mother's Day. But the thing to note about these is that if you do receive one of these and you go ahead and plant it out in your garden, it's very likely that it will never bloom for you, and you might just get foliage. Because these are generally not as hardy as the traditional hydrangeas, many times these will fail to bloom. So a lot of times when you hear people complain about their macrophylla or mop head type hydrangeas not blooming, they'll say, oh, my blue hydrangea, it never blooms for me. It's because at some point they were gifted one of these hydrangeas that they planted in their garden, and they just are not a hardy plant. So while these make wonderful gifts and are really beautiful, they're just not the type of hydrangea that you want to plant out in your garden if you want to get these beautiful large clusters of blooms year after year. So just a little note and what I've learned over the years about these greenhouse or florist grade hydrangeas. And here are some 6-inch pots for $16.98. Well, that brings us to the end of the March inventory here at the Home Depot. I hope that you've enjoyed seeing what my store has in stock, and I hope that you can find some of these plant selections near you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.